Everyone wants power, but few understand what it truly demands. It's not brute strength, it's not good fortune, it's clarity, cold strategy, ruthless discipline. Power belongs to the one who sees the world as it is, not as they wish it to be. To rise above, you must learn to control perception, leverage fear, and move in silence. The great minds of history weren't just thinkers, they were tacticians, kings in disguise. In this video, I'll show you how to think like them. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? Do you know what separates the powerful from the powerless? It isn't intelligence, it isn't wealth, it isn't even courage. It's the ability to see reality without flinching. I have watched princes rise and fall. I have seen republics crumble and dynasties collapse. And in every instance, their downfall began with the same fatal error. They chose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. You want power? Then first, you must strip away your illusions. People are not inherently good or evil. They are self-interested. Loyalty is not given. It is bought or enforced. Peace is not natural. It is a temporary pause between conflicts. Let me share what I learned in the courts of Florence. When I advised princes and navigated political storms, I discovered that most men live in a fantasy. They see the world as they wish it to be. They believe in permanent allies. They trust in unconditional love. They expect fairness in an unfair world. But here's what the powerful understand. Reality cares nothing for your wishes. Nature is neither cruel nor kind. It simply is. And those who see it clearly gain an advantage that no weapon can match. Think of yourself as a general surveying a battlefield. You cannot afford to imagine that the enemy will show mercy. You cannot pretend that the terrain is easier than it is. Every self-deception, every comforting lie you tell yourself, becomes a weakness your opponents will exploit. The first step toward power is this brutal honesty. Look at your strengths without pride and your weaknesses without shame. They are simply facts to be used. Study those around you not as you wish them to be, but as they are. Watch their actions, not their words. People will always show you who they are, if you have the courage to look. Here's what most don't understand. This clarity isn't cynicism, it's freedom. When you stop expecting the world to be fair, you can focus on making it work for you. When you stop believing in permanent friends or enemies, you can start seeing opportunities everywhere. Consider how the greatest rulers of history maintained their power. They didn't waste time lamenting the cruelty of their enemies or the fickleness of their allies. They accepted these as natural conditions, like weather or terrain, and planned accordingly. The weak speak of what should be. The powerful deal with what is. They understand that complaining about reality doesn't change it. It only reveals your own weakness. Every moment spent wishing for a different world is a moment wasted, not mastering the one you're in. But let me ask you this. Are you ready for such clarity? Can you handle seeing the world stripped of comfortable illusions? Many say yes, but they retreat to their fantasies at the first sign of discomfort. The path to power begins with this choice. Will you see the world as it is, with all its harsh realities and hidden opportunities? Or will you remain in the comforting darkness of your illusions? Remember, the truth is neither good nor bad. It simply is. And those who see it most clearly rule those who don't. Your first task is this. Spend 1 week observing without judgment. Watch how people actually behave, not how they claim to behave. Notice the gap between what they say and what they do. Don't try to change it. Don't wish it were different. Just observe, take special note of these patterns. How quickly promises are forgotten when circumstances change. How loyalty shifts with advantage. How virtue becomes flexible when profit is involved. How principles bend under pressure. How alliances form and dissolve based on utility. This is how you begin to think like the powerful. This is how you start to see what others miss. This is how you build the foundation of real power. The masses comfort themselves with illusions. the powerful arm themselves with truth. Which will you choose? Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is worth more than gold. The world is ruled not by what is, but by what appears to be. I've seen weak men command armies. I've watched fools lead nations. I've observed cowards being celebrated as heroes. How? They mastered the art of appearances. Here is what most people don't understand. Power isn't just about having strength. It's about being perceived as strong. The appearance of power often creates real power. This is not deception. This is the highest form of truth in the game of power. In the courts of Florence, I watched mediocre men rise to greatness not through ability, but through careful manipulation of how others saw them. They understood a fundamental truth. People don't follow reality. They follow their perception of reality. Think of it like a theater. The audience doesn't care about the scaffolding behind the scenes. They care about the performance before them. Your life, your power, your influence, these are your stage. Every gesture, every word, every silence must be choreographed with purpose. Let me teach you the principles I learned from the most skilled players of this game. First, understand that consistency matters more than intensity. It's better to appear consistently competent than occasionally brilliant. People trust what they can predict. The powerful maintain their image with the same dedication. A sculptor maintains their chisel. It is their primary tool. Second, guard your image like a fortress. Every action, every word, every gesture must reinforce the perception you want to create. One moment of weakness can shatter years of careful work. The masses forgive failure more easily than they forgive inconsistency. Third, master the art of calculated revelation. Show people enough to draw them in, but never enough to satisfy their curiosity completely. Power lives in the space between what is known and what is wondered about. But let me ask you this. Do you think this means you must be false? No. The greatest masters of appearance align their image with their strongest truths. They amplify what serves them and minimize what doesn't. They understand that authenticity is a weapon when wielded with precision. Consider these tactical elements of image cultivation. Your voice should carry weight even in whispers. Your movements should suggest purpose even in rest. Your silence should speak louder than others' words. Your presence should be felt even in absence. Your anger should be feared even when you smile. Your calm should unsettle even in chaos. Remember the principle of selective revelation. Show people what serves your purpose, not what serves their curiosity. Your power grows in the space between what they know and what they wonder about. Here's a truth that the weak never grasp. Perception creates reality. When people believe you are powerful, they behave as if you are powerful. Their belief becomes your weapon. Their imagination becomes your shield. Consider this. Every great leader I studied understood that their public image was not a mask. It was a tool. They crafted it with the same care a sculptor shapes marble. Every detail mattered. Every gesture had purpose. Nothing was too small to consider in the grand performance of power. Your task now is to become conscious of your own image. Start with these fundamental aspects. Your speech. Speak less than necessary. Let your words carry weight. Master the power of strategic silence. Never explain unless explanation serves you. Your presence. Command space without effort. Move with deliberate purpose. Maintain composure under pressure. Let your calm unsettle others. Your reactions, respond. Never react. Keep your emotions private. Let others wonder about your thoughts. Make your intentions a mystery. The masses are moved by appearances. The wise know how to create them. The powerful know how to maintain them. This is not about deception. It's about understanding the language of power itself. Remember, in the game of power, what people believe about you is more important than what is true about you. Master this principle, and you master the world. Now we come to a truth that many will resist, but the powerful have always understood. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. This isn't cynicism, it's wisdom born from centuries of observation. I have watched leaders fall because they chased affection instead of respect. I have seen kind rulers deposed by the very people they pampered, and I have observed how those who master fear, not terror but fear, maintain their position through both prosperity and chaos. Here's what most people don't understand. Love is fickle. It depends on good times and favorable circumstances. But fear? Fear endures. Fear is constant. Fear is reliable. Love can turn to hatred in a moment of disappointment, but fear remains steady through success and failure alike. Think of it like the force of gravity. It's not violent or cruel, but everyone respects it. Everyone accounts for it. Everyone plans around it. That's the kind of fear you want to cultivate, not the terror of a tyrant, but the unwavering respect for consequences that nature itself commands. I watched the Medici family rule Florence, not through brutality, but through carefully calibrated fear. Their allies feared losing their favor. Their enemies feared their competence. The public feared their absence more than their presence. This is the subtle art of fear as a tool of power. But let me ask you this. Why do so many leaders fail to understand this principle? They chase popularity. They want to be liked. They believe that kindness equals strength, and in doing so, they sacrifice real power for temporary approval. The truth is this: people will betray love when it serves them, but they will think twice before betraying someone they fear, not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they're afraid of consequences. This is the fundamental difference between terror and proper fear. Consider these essential elements of proper fear. It must be based on competence, not cruelty. It must be consistent, not capricious. It must be impersonal, not emotional. It must be predictable in principle, but unpredictable in application. It must be rooted in capability, not threats. Here's how to cultivate the right kind of fear. Build a reputation for remembering both loyalty and betrayal. Demonstrate your capability for both reward and reprisal. Show that you can help or hinder others' ambitions. Prove that you can stand alone if necessary. Make it clear that you cannot be manipulated by approval or disapproval. Remember this crucial point. Fear must be balanced with respect. If people only fear you, they'll unite against you. If they fear and respect you, they'll align themselves with you. This is why the fear must come from your competence, not your cruelty. Study how nature teaches this lesson. We love the sun, but we respect the storm. We admire the lion, but we fear its claws. In both cases, it's not the violence we fear, it's the power and the possibility. This is the model for proper fear in leadership. Your power grows when people know that. You notice everything, but don't react to everything. You remember. Slights, but choose your moments for response. You have the capacity to affect their future. You operate on your own timeline. You cannot be swayed by emotional manipulation. The practical application is simple, but profound. Build your reputation on competence, not cruelty. Let people know that crossing you isn't dangerous because you're violent, but because you're capable. Let them understand that disappointing you doesn't mean punishment. It means losing opportunities. Your task is to cultivate what I call professional fear, the kind that makes people think twice before challenging you. Check their work twice before presenting it. Consider the consequences of disappointing you. Value your approval because it's earned, not given. Respect your time because it's precious, not because it's enforced. The weak lead through permission. The powerful lead through presence. The foolish lead through terror. The wise lead through calculated fear combined with demonstrated competence. Remember, in the game of power, it's better to be respected than loved, better to be feared than respected, and best to be both feared and respected, but never be hated. Hatred is the one emotion that overcomes both fear and love. Now we come to a truth that many will resist, but the powerful have always understood. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. This isn't cynicism, it's wisdom, born from centuries of observation. I have watched leaders fall because they chased affection instead of respect. I have seen kind rulers deposed by the very people they pampered. And I have observed how those who master fear, not terror but fear, maintain their position through both prosperity and chaos. Here's what most people don't understand. Love is fickle. It depends on good times and favorable circumstances. But fear endures. Fear is constant. Fear is reliable. Love can turn to hatred in a moment of disappointment. But fear remains steady through success and failure alike. Think of it like the force of gravity. It's not violent or cruel, but everyone respects it. Everyone accounts for it. Everyone plans around it. That's the kind of fear you want to cultivate, not the terror of a tyrant, but the unwavering respect for consequences that nature itself commands. I watched the Medici family rule Florence, not through brutality, but through carefully calibrated fear. Their allies feared losing their favor. Their enemies feared their competence. The public feared their absence more than their presence. This is the subtle art of fear as a tool of power. But let me ask you this. Why do so many leaders fail to understand this principle? They chase popularity. They want to be liked. They believe that kindness equals strength. And in doing so, they sacrifice real power for temporary approval. The truth is this: people will betray love when it serves them. But they will think twice before betraying someone they fear, not because they're afraid of punishment, but because they're afraid of consequences. This is the fundamental difference between terror and proper fear. Consider these essential elements of proper fear. It must be based on competence, not cruelty. It must be consistent, not capricious. It must be impersonal, not emotional. It must be predictable in principle, but unpredictable in application. It must be rooted in capability, not threats. Here's how to cultivate the right kind of fear. Build a reputation for remembering both loyalty and betrayal. Demonstrate your capability for both reward and reprisal. Show that you can help or hinder others' ambitions. Prove that you can stand alone if necessary. Make it clear that you cannot be manipulated by approval or disapproval. Remember this crucial point. Fear must be balanced with respect. If people only fear you, they'll unite against you. If they fear and respect you, they'll align themselves with you. This is why the fear must come from your competence, not your cruelty. Study how nature teaches this lesson. We love the sun, but we respect the storm. We admire the lion, but we fear its claws. In both cases, it's not the violence we fear, it's the power and the possibility. This is the model for proper fear in leadership. Your power grows when people know that. You notice everything, but don't react to everything you remember. Slights, but choose your moments for response. You have the capacity to affect their future. You operate on your own timeline. You cannot be swayed by emotional manipulation. The practical application is simple but profound. Build your reputation on competence, not cruelty. Let people know that crossing you isn't dangerous because you're violent, but because you're capable. Let them understand that disappointing you doesn't mean punishment. It means losing opportunities. Your task is to cultivate what I call professional fear, the kind that makes people think twice before challenging you. Check their work. Twice before presenting it, consider the consequences of disappointing you. Value your approval because it's earned, not given. Respect your time because it's precious, not because it's enforced. The weak lead through permission. The powerful lead through presence. The foolish lead through terror. The wise lead through calculated fear combined with demonstrated competence. Remember, in the game of power, it's better to be respected than loved, better to be feared than respected, and best to be both feared and respected. But never be hated. Hatred is the one emotion that overcomes both fear and love. The most dangerous weapon in the arsenal of the powerful is not force, wealth, or even intelligence. It's mystery. Those who reveal everything know nothing of power. Those who show their every intention have already lost the game before it begins. I learned this in the shadow of princes and popes. The moment you declare your intentions, you give others the power to block them. The instant you show your hand, you lose the advantage of uncertainty. The second you reveal your true aim, you arm your opponents with the very knowledge they need to defeat you. Here's what most people don't understand. Human nature compels us to fill in gaps. When we don't know something, we create stories, theories, possibilities. This mental tension, this uncertainty, is more powerful than any truth you could reveal. It forces others to waste energy considering all possibilities. Rather than focusing on countering your true intention, think of power like a game of chess. The amateur announces their strategy. The master keeps their opponent guessing until the final move. Why? Because uncertainty creates caution. Caution creates opportunity. Opportunity creates power. Let me share a principle I observed in the courts. The less you reveal, the more people look. The more they look, the less they see. And in their searching, they often reveal their own intentions. This is the paradox of power. Your opacity becomes a mirror in which others see their own thoughts reflected. Consider these levels of strategic ambiguity. Surface level, what you say and do publicly. Apparent level, what people think you mean. Assumed level, what people suspect you're hiding. True level, your actual intentions. Reserve level, options you haven't even revealed to yourself. But let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed how the truly powerful speak? They deal in possibilities, not declarations. They suggest rather than state. They leave room for interpretation, and in that room, their power grows. Master these tactical elements of strategic ambiguity. Speak in ways that can be interpreted multiple ways. Let others fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. Never reject possibilities outright. Keep your timeline fluid. Let your silence speak louder than words. Maintain multiple viable paths simultaneously. Keep your true goal hidden even from allies. Use transparency strategically to hide deeper moves. The art is not in being completely mysterious. It's in revealing just enough to keep others engaged while never enough to make yourself predictable. Think of it like shadow and light. You need both to create depth. Here's a truth I learned from watching the rise and fall of leaders. Those who wear their hearts on their sleeves often find those hearts cut out. Not through malice, but through the simple fact that known intentions become vulnerable intentions. Your power grows in the gaps between what people know and what they think they know. In these shadows, you gain room to maneuver, time to observe, space to change course, ability to test loyalties, freedom to evolve strategies, opportunity to mislead opponents, power to shape narratives, control over timing. Remember, every time you feel compelled to explain yourself, ask whether your power might be better served by silence. Every time you want to reveal your plans, consider whether mystery might be more valuable. The practical application requires discipline. Never reveal the full scope of your ambitions. Keep multiple interpretations of your actions viable. Let others convince themselves of your intentions. Use partial truths to obscure complete ones. Maintain flexibility through ambiguity. Create patterns, only to break them. Make your clarity selective and purposeful. Your task is to practice strategic ambiguity. In daily life, instead of giving direct answers, learn to respond with questions rather than showing your whole plan. Reveal only the next step. Let people wonder about your capabilities. Keep your connections ambiguous. Make your next move unpredictable. Guard your true thoughts behind acceptable ones. The masses crave certainty. Give them just enough to keep them engaged. The powerful understand that uncertainty is a tool. Use it to maintain your advantage. The wise know that intentions, once revealed, become targets. Keep yours hidden until the moment of triumph. Remember, in the game of power, the most dangerous player is not the strongest or the smartest, but the one whose next move cannot be predicted. Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you, because this lesson separates the truly powerful from the merely ambitious. The loudest voice in the room is often the weakest one. True power does not need to announce itself. It is felt before. It is seen, known before it is demonstrated. In my years advising the powerful, I noticed a pattern that repeated itself across centuries and courts. Those who constantly spoke of their strength rarely possessed it. Those who endlessly proclaimed their victories were often closest to defeat. Those who boasted of their wisdom typically lacked it most severely. Here's what most people don't understand. Every time you speak of your ambitions, you release the energy needed to achieve them. Every time you boast of your plans, you give your opponents time to prepare. Every time you reveal your progress, you invite interference. True power grows in silence, like a sword being forged in a quiet workshop. I witnessed countless men destroy themselves through their own announcements. They confused attention for power, noise for influence, visibility for strength. Meanwhile, the truly dangerous ones built their empires in silence, emerging only when victory was certain. They understood that power, like a hunting lion, moves most effectively in silence. Consider these fundamental principles of silent power. Power that must constantly announce itself is no power at all. Real strength is felt in its absence, not its display. True capability doesn't need witnesses to its development. Genuine power attracts attention without seeking it. The most significant moves are made in complete silence. Strength built in secret has no rivals preparing against it. Silent preparation allows for perfect timing, but let me ask you this. Why do so many feel compelled to announce their every move? They mistake visibility for achievement. They confuse reactions for respect. They would rather seem powerful than be powerful. This is the first and greatest mistake in the pursuit of power. The principle is simple but profound. Power that grows in silence has no limits that others can perceive. When no one knows the extent of your capabilities, they must assume them to be significant. Your silence becomes a canvas upon which others paint their fears and respect. Here's how to build strength in silence. Work without announcing your progress. Learn without revealing your knowledge. Prepare without displaying your readiness. Advance without broadcasting your movements. Achieve without explaining your methods. Acquire without showcasing your gains. Influence without demonstrating your reach. Remember, this truth I learned in Florence. The most dangerous players at court were never the ones giving speeches. They were the ones quietly building alliances, silently gathering information, patiently accumulating resources. They understood that true power, like the roots of a great tree, grows strongest in darkness. Your power multiplies in silence because your opponents can't prepare for what they don't see. Your progress isn't interrupted by premature celebration. Your failures remain private, becoming lessons instead of weaknesses. Your energy stays focused on growth rather than appearance. Your achievements speak louder than any words could. Your capabilities remain unknown and therefore unlimited. Your timing remains purely your own. The practical application is clear but demanding. Let your silence build curiosity. Let your restraint create mystery. Let your results spark conversation. Let your achievements speak for themselves. Let your absence make your presence more powerful. Let your quiet confidence unsettle others. Let your power be felt rather than heard. Here's a truth that the weak never grasp. The moment you feel the need to prove your power is the moment you begin to lose it. True power doesn't need witnesses to its development, only to its results. It grows like a pearl in an oyster, hidden from sight, until its perfection is complete. Your task now is to practice strategic silence. Start building something, anything, without telling a soul. Let the completion be the announcement. Let the achievement be the advertisement. Let the results speak louder than any proclamation could. Remember, in the game of power, silence is not just the absence of noise. It is the presence of opportunity. Every word not spoken is a word that cannot be used against you. Every move not announced is a move that cannot be countered. The masses build castles in the air with their words. The powerful build real ones in silence. Which will you choose? There's a principle of power that separates the great from the merely active. It's not how often you strike, but how decisively you do so when the moment is right. The masses confuse motion with progress, activity with achievement. The powerful know better. I've watched countless leaders exhaust themselves with constant action, depleting their resources on insignificant victories, scattering their strength across 1,000 minor battles. Meanwhile, the truly powerful wait, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, then strike once with such force that no second attempt is needed. Here's what most people don't understand. Power isn't about constant motion. It's about perfect timing. The amateur throws 100 punches. The master waits for the one perfect strike. This is not patience born of hesitation. It is the discipline of the hunter who knows that premature movement alerts the prey. In the courts of Italy, I observed how the most effective rulers would remain still, while others exhausted themselves with endless schemes and daily dramas. Then, when the moment was right, they would act with such precision and force that the game would end before others realized it had begun. Think of power like an archer's bow. The longer you draw back, the more force you gather. But this requires 3 things most people lack: patience to wait for the right moment, wisdom to recognize it when it comes, courage to commit fully when you strike, discipline to resist premature action, strength to hold position under pressure. But let me ask you this: why do so many fail to grasp this principle? They mistake activity for achievement. They confuse motion with progress. They would rather look busy than be effective. Most critically, they lack the courage to wait when everything in them screams for action. The truth is this: every action depletes your resources. Every move reveals your position. Every strike teaches your opponents about your methods. Therefore, when you do act, it must be worth the cost. The power of your strike must justify the length of your wait. Consider these elements of decisive action: intelligence gathering, know your target completely, understand all possible reactions, map every escape route, identify all potential allies and enemies, calculate all secondary effects, resource preparation, gather overwhelming force, secure all necessary support, establish contingency plans, position assets strategically, maintain perfect readiness, timing, selection, wait for target vulnerability, choose. Moments of distraction strike when least expected. Act during natural confusion. Move when defenses are weakest. Remember what I learned from watching both victories and defeats. The most devastating moves in history weren't the most complex. They were the most complete. They succeeded not because they were clever, but because they were comprehensive. Your power grows through selective action because your reputation for effectiveness grows. Your opponents can't predict your patterns. Your resources remain concentrated. Your moves carry more weight. Your victories become more memorable. Your failures become less frequent. Your power appears more absolute. The practical application is straightforward but demanding. Before any action, ask yourself, is this the perfect moment? Am I fully prepared? Will this strike be decisive? Can this victory be complete? Are all resources in position? Have I considered every contingency? Will the result justify the reveal? Here's a truth that the weak never grasp: the ability to wait, to hold your position while others waste their energy, is often more powerful than the ability to act. The discipline to remain still while others flutter about in constant motion is a sign of superior strength. Your task is to master strategic patience. Choose one significant goal, Resist all temptation to move prematurely. Gather your resources. In absolute silence, wait for perfect conditions, strike with overwhelming force, accept nothing less than complete victory. The masses act constantly, achieving little. The powerful act rarely, achieving everything. The weak strike often out of fear and anxiety. The strong strike once out of certainty and preparation. Remember, in the game of power, it's not the number of moves you make. It's the completeness of your victory when you do move. Listen closely to what I'm about to share, for this is the art that separates master strategists from mere players. Every weakness can become a weapon. Every disadvantage holds the seed of advantage. Every wound can become a source of power. In my years observing the great game of power, I witnessed something remarkable. Those who rose highest often started from positions of greatest weakness. They understood a fundamental truth that most miss. It's not the strength of your position that matters, but how you transform what you have into what you need. Here's what most people don't understand. Weakness, when properly understood, is merely power in disguise. The small can become nimble. The poor can become hungry. The outcast can become independent. But this alchemy requires a special kind of vision, the ability to see possibility where others see only limitation. I watched a merchant in Florence, marked by a prominent limp, transform his apparent weakness into his greatest strength. Rather than hide it, he made it his signature. His competitors underestimated him. His clients remembered him. His physical limitation became his market differentiation. This is the art of turning lead into gold. Consider these principles of strategic transformation. Every weakness has an opposing strength. Every limitation creates a unique opportunity. Every scar tells a story that can serve you. Every disadvantage forces innovation. Every struggle builds unique capabilities. Every rejection creates independence. Every failure teaches exclusive lessons. But let me ask you this. Why do most people fail to transform their weaknesses? They're too busy hiding them. They waste energy on shame that could be spent on strategy. They see weakness as something to overcome rather than something to harness. The principle is profound but practical. Your greatest weakness, fully embraced, becomes impossible to attack. What can enemies do with a vulnerability you've already mastered? How can they use against you what you've already turned to your advantage? Here's how to transform weakness into power. Study your limitations intimately. Understand their full implications. Find their hidden advantages. Master their unique opportunities. Transform their energy completely. Deploy them strategically. Build systems around them. Remember this truth I learned in the courts. The most dangerous adversaries weren't those born to power. They were those who had to claw their way to it. Their struggles didn't weaken them. Their struggles armed them with unique weapons. Your power multiplies through transformation because what others see as weakness, you use as strength. What they avoid, you embrace. What they hide, you display. What they fear, you master. What they attack, you've already transformed. What they underestimate, you've weaponized. What they mock, you've made meaningful. The practical application requires 3 phases. First, inventory list every perceived weakness. Catalog every limitation. Document every struggle. Record every failure. Note every rejection. Second, analysis. Find the hidden advantage in each. Identify unique perspectives gained. Discover forced innovations. Recognize special strengths developed. Understand exclusive insights earned. Third, transformation. Turn scars into stories. Convert struggles into strategies. Transform limitations into innovations. Make rejections into independence. Use failures as foundations. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. Perfect strength is often less valuable than well-transformed weakness. Why? Because pure strength can be predicted and countered, but transformed weakness creates something entirely new. Your task now is to begin this transformation. Choose your most significant perceived weakness. Study it without shame or judgment. Find its hidden advantages. Design strategies around its unique properties. Deploy it where others least expect strength. Master its special opportunities. Build your power through its transformation. Remember, in the game of power, it's not what you're given, it's what you create from what you have. The truly powerful don't wish for better circumstances. They transform the circumstances they have into weapons no one else can wield. The masses hide their weaknesses. The mediocre overcome them. The powerful transform them. Which path will you choose? Let me share with you one of the most crucial principles of power, one that I observed time and again in the courts of Italy. Your enemies are your greatest teachers, and their weaknesses are your most valuable lessons. The wise ruler doesn't just watch their enemies. They study them with the dedication of a scholar. Here's what most people don't understand. The purpose of keeping enemies close isn't revenge or paranoia. It's education. Every opponent is a library of lessons waiting to be learned. Every adversary is a manual of mistakes waiting to be read. Every enemy is a mirror showing you what to avoid and what to exploit. In Florence, I watched how the greatest strategists treated their enemies like chess pieces they hadn't yet captured. They didn't hate them. They studied them. They didn't curse them. They cataloged their every move. They understood that hatred blinds, but careful observation illuminates. Consider these levels of enemy analysis: surface behavior public, actions and reactions, visible patterns and habits, known associations and allies, obvious strengths and weaknesses, hidden mechanics, decision-making processes, true motivations and fears, hidden alliances and enmities, concealed strengths and weaknesses, strategic vulnerabilities, psychological blind spots, emotional trigger points, strategic dependencies, critical weaknesses, exploitable patterns. But let me ask you this: why do most people fail at studying their enemies? They let emotion cloud observation. They seek confirmation of their hatred rather than understanding of their opponent. They look for ways to despise rather than ways to defeat. The principle is sophisticated but clear. Every enemy has a pattern. Every pattern has a flaw. Every flaw has a trigger. Your power grows not from hating these patterns, but from understanding them so completely that they become predictable. Here's how to master the art of enemy study. Observation phase. Watch without emotional involvement. Document every pattern. And habit note reactions to different situations. Map their network of relationships. Track their decision-making process. Analysis phase. Find recurring weaknesses. Identify psychological triggers. Map emotional vulnerabilities. Understand their core. Fears. Catalog their critical dependencies. Strategic phase. Develop multiple leverage points. Create contingency plans. Position assets strategically. Prepare indirect approaches. Maintain tactical flexibility. Remember this truth from the courts: the most dangerous enemy isn't the strongest one. It's the one you don't understand. Knowledge of your opponent's weaknesses is more valuable than any weapon. Your power multiplies through understanding because you can predict their moves before they make them. You can exploit weaknesses they don't know they have. You can trigger reactions they can't control. You can prevent threats before they materialize. You can turn their strengths against them. You can make their patterns work for you. You can transform their aggression into opportunity. The practical application requires systematic study. Create detailed profiles of each opponent. Document their patterns and preferences. Map their relationships and dependencies. Understand their decision-making process. Identify their emotional triggers. Catalog their past responses. To situations, analyze their blind spots and biases. Here's a truth the weak never grasp: your enemies will teach you more than your friends ever will. Your friends show you what you want to see. Your enemies force you to see what you need to see. Your task now is to begin this systematic study. Choose your most significant opponent. Study them without emotional involvement. Document their patterns. Methodically map their relationships carefully, understand their motivations deeply, learn their weaknesses intimately. Prepare your strategies thoroughly. Remember, in the game of power, hatred is a weakness, but understanding is strength. The truly powerful don't hate their enemies. They study them, learn from them, and use what they learn to perfect their own strategy. The masses hate their enemies. The mediocre ignore them. The powerful study them. Which approach will you choose? Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you one of the most potent secrets of power. History belongs to those who write it. Truth is not what happened. Truth is what people believe happened. The one who controls the story controls reality itself. In my time at the courts of Italy, I witnessed how the truly powerful understood something that others missed entirely. Events don't matter as much as how those events are interpreted. A defeat can become a victory if framed correctly. A weakness can become strength if the story is told right. A mistake can become wisdom if narrated properly. Here's what most people don't understand. Reality is merely raw material. It's the interpretation of reality that shapes the world. The same event can be a tragedy or triumph, a mistake or a masterstroke. It all depends on who controls the narrative. Yuck. Consider these levels of narrative control. Immediate framing, how events are interpreted as they happen, which details are emphasized or minimized, what context is provided or withheld, how cause and effect are connected. Strategic storytelling, how events fit into larger patterns, which themes are reinforced, what precedents are established, how future expectations are shaped. Historical positioning, how events will be remembered, what lessons will be drawn, which perspectives will endure, how legacy will be crafted. But let me ask you this. Why do most people fail at controlling narratives? They focus on events rather than interpretation. They react to stories instead of creating them. They try to argue with narratives instead of replacing them with better ones. The principle is profound but practical. Every event is neutral until interpreted. Every action is meaningless until contextualized. Every outcome is undefined until narrated. Your power lies not in changing what happened, but in controlling what it means. Master these elements of narrative control. Frame, selection. Choose the context that serves your purpose. Define the scope. Of relevance. Establish the reference points. Set the emotional tone. Detail management. Emphasize useful elements. Minimize harmful aspects. Create meaningful patterns. Build coherent themes. Perspective positioning. Control the point of view. Manage. Emotional distance. Direct attention flow. Guide interpretation. Remember this truth from the courts. The most powerful person in any situation is not the one who controls what happens, but the one who controls what it means. Events are temporary. Interpretations endure. Your power multiplies through narrative control because you shape how events are understood, you influence how actions are interpreted, you control how motives are perceived, you direct how consequences are evaluated. You guide how history is written. You manage how legacy is built. You determine how future events are framed. The practical application requires systematic mastery. Immediate response control. First impressions. Establish initial context. Frame early interpretations. Set narrative direction, narrative development. Build supporting themes. Create reinforcing patterns. Manage contradictions. Guide evolving interpretations. Legacy, crafting, establish enduring meanings, create lasting lessons. Shape historical understanding. Build future reference points. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. Events are like clay. They can be shaped into whatever story serves your purpose. The truly powerful don't just participate in events, they control how those events are understood. Your task now is to begin mastering narrative control. Study how different narratives shape perception. Practice reframing events advantageously. Learn to identify key narrative moments. Master the art of strategic interpretation. Develop skill in context management. perfect the timing of narrative shifts, build expertise in legacy crafting. Remember, in the game of power, what actually happened is less important than what people believe happened. The masses react to events, the mediocre record them, the powerful shape how they're remembered. The great secret is this: reality is not a fixed thing. It's a story waiting to be told. And the one who tells the most compelling story controls not just the past, but the present and future as well. The question is not what happened. The question is, what story will you tell about what happened? And more importantly, how will you ensure your story is the one that endures? Let me share with you perhaps the most crucial principle of power, one that determines who survives and who perishes in the great game. Stagnation is death. The world changes, and those who fail to change with it become irrelevant before they become extinct. I witnessed countless powerful families in Florence fall not to external enemies, but to their own rigidity. They clung to old methods while the world transformed around them. They celebrated their traditions while their competitors embraced new realities. They died not with a sword, but with outdated convictions. Here's what most people don't understand. Adaptation isn't just about survival, it's about power. Those who adapt first don't just endure, they dominate. Those who adapt best don't just survive, they rule. The ability to change is not a defensive trait, it's an offensive weapon. Consider these levels of adaptation: tactical adaptation, immediate; response to threats, quick adjustment to opportunities; rapid learning from feedback, swift correction of errors; strategic adaptation, long-term vision adjustment; fundamental method, evolution; core capability, development; deep pattern recognition, transformative; adaptation, complete identity, reinvention; total paradigm shifts, revolutionary innovations, radical perspective changes. But let me ask you this: why do so many fail to adapt? They confuse principles with methods. They mistake habits for values. They choose comfort over survival. They prefer the familiar death to the unfamiliar life. The principle is absolute. Either you adapt or you become irrelevant. Either you evolve or you perish. There is no middle ground, no safe harbor, no permanent position of power. The only constant is change itself. Master these elements of adaptation: recognition, spot changes early, identify true threats, see real opportunities, understand deep patterns, response, move quickly when needed, change deeply, when required, transform. Completely if necessary, preserve only what truly matters. Reinvention, rebuild core capabilities, develop new strengths, create fresh advantages. Master emerging realities. Remember this truth from history: the most dangerous moment for any power is not when it faces opposition, but when it faces change. External enemies can be fought. Internal resistance to change is often fatal. Your power multiplies through adaptation because you seize opportunities others don't see. You survive threats others don't survive. You master changes others don't understand. You thrive in conditions others can't handle. You rule in contexts others can't navigate. You succeed where others can't adapt. You dominate while others disappear. The practical application requires systematic mastery. Environmental scanning. Monitor changes constantly. Analyze trends carefully. Study disruptions thoroughly. Track transformations systematically. Response, development, plan, adaptation strategically. Test changes systematically. Implement shifts carefully. Evaluate results honestly. Continuous evolution. Never stop changing. Always keep learning. Constantly keep growing. Perpetually keep adapting. Here's a truth the weak never grasp: the ability to change is the ultimate power. It doesn't matter how strong you are today if you can't adapt to tomorrow. It doesn't matter how right you are now if you're wrong about what's next. Your task now is to begin mastering adaptation. Identify what must never change. Recognize what must always change. Learn to distinguish between principles and methods. Develop systems for constant evolution. Build capabilities for rapid transformation. Create processes for continuous learning. Establish mechanisms for perpetual renewal. Remember, in the game of power, the most dangerous phrase is, "This is how we've always done it." The most powerful position is not any particular position. It's the ability to take any position required. The masses resist change. The mediocre accept it. The powerful engineer it. They don't just adapt to the future, they create it. They don't just survive change, they master it. The question isn't whether you will change. Change is inevitable. The question is whether you will change by design or by disaster. Will you be the master of change or its victim? Listen carefully to this fundamental truth of power. Your rise is determined not just by your own strength, but by the company you keep. Power attracts power. Success breeds success. And the wise understand that strategic alignment is often more valuable than individual capability. In the courts of Florence, I observed how the truly powerful operated like planets in a solar system. They understood that orbit matters. They knew that to rise in power, one must first learn to recognize power, then learn to serve it, and finally, learn to harness it. The greatest victories often came not through direct conquest, but through strategic alignment. Here's what most people don't understand. Success leaves clues, creates patterns, and builds momentum. When you align yourself with winners, you don't just gain opportunities. You absorb their methods, inherit their momentum, and learn their unspoken rules of power. Consider these levels of strategic alignment: proximity power, physical presence near the powerful, access to key decision-makers, participation in important circles, exposure to crucial information, association, power, strategic relationships, meaningful connections, valuable partnerships, powerful mentorships, integration, power, deep involvement in successful systems, essential roles in winning teams, critical positions in growing power structures, vital functions in prosperous organizations. But let me ask you this. Why do so many fail at strategic alignment? They choose comfort over growth. They align with the familiar instead of the powerful. They prefer to be big fish in small ponds rather than learn to swim in larger waters. The principle is clear but demanding. Your power grows at the rate of your strongest associations. Your potential is limited or expanded by the company you keep. Your future is shaped by those you choose to serve and support. Master these elements of strategic alignment. Recognition. Identify true power accurately. Spot rising forces early. Recognize genuine potential. Understand real influence positioning. Move closer to power centers. Create valuable connections. Build meaningful relationships. Establish crucial roles. Integration. Become indispensable. Add unique value. Create mutual benefit. Generate reciprocal growth. Remember this truth from the courts. The most rapid rise to power often comes not through direct accumulation, but through strategic association. 1 year in the right circle is worth a decade in the wrong one. Your power multiplies through alignment because you learn what others can't access. You see what others can't see. You understand what others can't grasp. You access what others can't reach. You achieve what others can't attempt. You grow where others can't flourish. You rise while others remain static. The practical application requires systematic execution, environment analysis. Study power structures, thoroughly map influence. Networks carefully track success patterns. Diligently identify growth opportunities systematically. Strategic positioning, move with clear purpose, build with specific intent, connect with deliberate focus, serve with strategic aim, value integration, contribute unique benefits, create essential roles, develop crucial capabilities, generate irreplaceable value. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. It's better to be the least powerful person in a room of giants than the most powerful person in a room of dwarfs. Your growth is determined by your environment more than your initial capabilities. Your task now is to begin strategic alignment. Audit your current associations, evaluate your present environment, identify powerful potential connections, plan strategic moves upward, create valuable relationship opportunities, develop unique contribution capabilities, build meaningful integration paths. Remember, in the game of power, it's not just what you know or what you can do, it's who you're aligned with and what circles you operate in. The masses focus on individual achievement. The powerful understand that alignment often trumps ability. The question isn't whether you're talented, the question is whether you're positioned where your talent can multiply. Are you aligned with those who can amplify your power, or are you surrounded by those who will limit it? Success is contagious. Power is magnetic. Greatness is infectious. Choose your alignments not based on where you are, but on where you intend to go. Let me share with you one of the most powerful principles I observed in both warfare and politics. The greatest power comes when retreat becomes impossible. When you burn your ships, your only option is victory. When you destroy all alternatives, success becomes your only choice. In Florence, I witnessed how the most decisive victories came not from having many options, but from eliminating all options except success. The greatest leaders didn't preserve their escape routes. They deliberately destroyed them. They understood that desperation, properly channeled, becomes determination. Here's what most people don't understand. Options are often obstacles. Alternatives can become anchors. The freedom to retreat often ensures defeat. True power comes not from keeping your options open, but from making success your only option. Consider these levels of commitment. Tactical commitment, eliminating immediate escape routes, burning short-term bridges, removing temporary alternatives, creating immediate pressure. Strategic commitment, destroying long-term fallbacks, eliminating comfort zones, removing safety nets, creating sustained pressure. Total commitment, complete point of no return, absolute elimination of alternatives, irrevocable dedication to outcome, creation of existential necessity. But let me ask you this. Why do so many fail to achieve their ultimate potential? They keep their backup plans. They maintain their safety nets. They preserve their escape routes. In doing so, they ensure their own defeat. The principle is absolute. Achievement is directly proportional to necessity. When success becomes your only option, success becomes your only outcome. When failure becomes impossible, victory becomes inevitable. Master these elements of total commitment. Alternative elimination. Identify all escape routes. Remove all backup plans. Destroy all safety nets. Eliminate all retreats. Resource concentration. Focus all energy forward. Channel all resources to goal. Direct all effort to success. Commit all assets to victory, psychological alignment. Create mental point of no return. Establish emotional necessity. Generate psychological pressure. Build irrevocable commitment. Remember this truth from history. The most legendary achievements came not from those who had many options, but from those who left themselves no choice but victory. When Alexander burned his ships, he didn't reduce his options. He increased his power. Your power multiplies through commitment. Because you access resources you didn't know you had. You find strength you didn't know existed. You discover solutions you wouldn't otherwise seek. You achieve things you wouldn't otherwise attempt. You overcome obstacles you wouldn't otherwise face. You persist when others would retreat. You succeed where others would surrender. The practical application requires systematic execution, situation analysis, identify all current alternatives, map all possible escape routes, list all backup plans, catalog all safety nets, strategic elimination, remove unnecessary options, destroy counterproductive alternatives, eliminate weakening choices, erase undermining possibilities, complete commitment, burn metaphorical ships, create points of no return, establish success only scenarios, generate victory-only conditions. Here's a truth the weak never grasp: the most dangerous opponent isn't the strongest one. It's the one who has no choice but to win. The most powerful position isn't having many options. It's having only one option: victory. Your task now is to begin this process of commitment. Identify your current escape routes, list your backup plans, catalog your safety nets, map your retreat paths, then systematically destroy them all. Create your own point of no return. Make success your only option. Remember, in the game of power, it's not about how many choices you have, it's about how completely you commit to the essential choice. The masses keep their options open. The powerful make success their only option. The question isn't whether you'll succeed or fail. When you destroy all alternatives, success becomes your only possible outcome. The only real question is, are you ready to burn your ships? The greatest power comes not from having choices, but from making the choice so complete, so irrevocable, that the universe itself seems to bend to your will. Will you continue to preserve your alternatives, or will you create the absolute necessity of your success? Listen carefully, for what I'm about to share may challenge your deepest beliefs. In the realm of power, results matter more than intentions. The world is not governed by moral preferences, but by the consequences of actions. Good intentions without. Results are nothing but failed strategies dressed in virtue. In my years advising princes, I witnessed how often moral posturing led to practical disaster. Leaders who placed their ethical reputation above effective action often lost both their virtue and their power. Meanwhile, those who understood the true relationship between morality and necessity achieved both their aims and the ability to do genuine good. Here's what most people don't understand. Morality is a luxury of the powerful. Those who cannot first secure their position cannot secure their principles. The truly moral action is not the one that looks most virtuous, but the one that produces the most beneficial outcome. Consider these levels of strategic thinking. Surface morality, appearing virtuous, following conventional ethics, maintaining moral reputation, preserving ethical image, strategic necessity, understanding real consequences, calculating actual outcomes, measuring true impact, evaluating genuine results, higher purpose, achieving lasting good, creating sustainable benefits, building enduring positive change, establishing real improvement. But let me ask you this: why do so many fail in their attempts to do good? They confuse the appearance of virtue with actual positive impact. They prioritize moral reputation over effective action. They choose to look good rather than do good. The principle is profound but practical. Effective action in an imperfect world requires perfect clarity, not perfect morality. The goal is not to be seen as good, but to be effective enough to create genuine good. Master these elements of strategic clarity. Outcome focus. Measure results, not intentions. Calculate real impact. Evaluate actual consequences. Judge by effects, not appearances. Practical assessment. Understand necessary actions. Accept required measures. Recognize essential steps. Acknowledge real costs. Strategic integration. Align methods with outcomes. Balance means and ends. Coordinate actions with aims. Harmonize tactics with goals. Remember this truth from the courts: the most virtuous appearing. Rulers often caused the most harm, while those who understood necessary action often created the most benefit. Good intentions without effective action are worse than useless. They're harmful. Your power multiplies through strategic clarity because you achieve what others only dream about. You create change others only talk about. You build what others only imagine. You accomplish what others only wish for. You succeed where others only hope. You deliver when others only promise. You act while others only preach. The practical application requires systematic understanding, reality assessment. See situations as they are. Understand actual requirements. Recognize true necessities. Accept real conditions, strategic planning, design effective actions, plan necessary steps, prepare required measures, arrange essential elements, execution, focus, implement. Without hesitation, act with clear purpose, move with decisive force, complete with thorough effect. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. The most moral action is the one that works. The most ethical choice is the one that actually creates positive change. The most virtuous decision is the one that produces real benefits. Your task now is to develop strategic clarity, separate appearance from effect, distinguish reputation from results, differentiate intention from impact, divide posturing from performance, focus on actual outcomes, concentrate on real changes, commit to genuine results. Remember, in the game of power, it's not about looking good, it's about doing good. And doing good requires the power to act effectively, not just the intention to act virtuously. The masses focus on moral appearance. The mediocre worry about ethical reputation. The powerful concentrate on actual impact. Which path will you choose? Don't let the appearance of virtue prevent the achievement of good. Don't let moral posturing replace effective action. Don't let ethical reputation become more important than actual results. The question isn't whether you appear good. The question is whether you achieve good. Are you ready to focus on what works rather than what merely looks virtuous? Listen carefully to this fundamental truth of power. Your reputation is not merely an image. It is your fortress, your weapon, and your crown. In the game of power, what people believe about you is more real than what is true about you. Guard it accordingly. In Florence, I watched reputations rise and fall like empires. Those who understood the power of reputation could survive any crisis. Those who neglected it could not survive even minor setbacks. A strong reputation can turn defeats into victories. A weak one can turn victories into defeats. Here's what most people don't understand. Reputation isn't just about being well thought of. It's about being thought of precisely as you wish to be thought of. It's not about being liked. It's about being perceived exactly as serves your purpose. Consider these levels of reputation management: surface reputation, public perception, common opinion, general impression, widespread beliefs, strategic reputation, carefully crafted image, deliberately shaped narrative, strategically managed perception, purposefully directed opinions, power reputation force, multiplier effect, automatic advantage creation, self-perpetuating influence, reputation, generated power. But let me ask you this. Why do so many fail at reputation management? They focus on short-term image instead of long-term power. They react to criticism instead of directing narrative. They try to be liked instead of being respected. The principle is absolute. Your reputation is your most valuable asset in the game of power. Unlike wealth, position, or even ability, a powerful reputation creates its own reality. People treat you according to your reputation, and their treatment of you reinforces your reputation. Master these elements of reputation control. Foundation building. Establish core characteristics. Create fundamental narratives. Build essential beliefs. Develop key perceptions. Active management. Monitor public opinion. Control flowing narratives. Direct emerging stories. Shape developing perceptions. Strategic defense. Prevent reputation damage. Counter harmful narratives. Deflect dangerous. Attacks transform threats into advantages. Remember this truth from the courts. The most powerful reputation isn't the most positive one, it's the most useful one. Sometimes being feared serves better than being loved. Sometimes being mysterious is more powerful than being known. Your power multiplies through reputation because people act based on what they believe about you. Opportunities come to you unbidden. Threats avoid you automatically. Allies seek you naturally. Enemies hesitate instinctively. Power flows toward you inevitably. Influence expands exponentially. The practical application requires systematic control. Reputation. Audit. Assess current perception. Evaluate existing narratives. Analyze present beliefs. Review operating stories. Strategic planning. Design desired reputation. Plan narrative evolution. Create perception shifts. Develop story arcs. Active implementation. Execute reputation strategy. Manage public perception. Control narrative flow. Direct story development. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. Your reputation is not what you wish it to be or what you think it should be. It's what serves your purposes best. Sometimes the most powerful reputation is not the most flattering one. Your task now is to begin systematic reputation management. Analyze your current reputation, identify your desired reputation, map the gap between them, plan the transformation. Execute with precision, monitor with vigilance, adjust with strategy. Remember, in the game of power, reputation is both weapon and armor. It strikes for you when you're absent and defends you while you sleep. The masses leave their reputation to chance. The powerful craft it with precision. Consider these essential questions. What do people believe about you? What do you want them to believe? What stories circulate about you? What stories should circulate? How does your reputation serve you? How could it serve you better? What must change to get there? The question isn't whether you have a reputation. You do. The question is whether you will let others shape it or shape it yourself. Will you let your reputation be a product of chance, or will you craft it into a tool of power? Listen carefully to this essential truth of power. Emotion is the enemy of strategy. Kindness has its moment, warmth has its place. But power requires the ability to set aside feeling when necessity demands it. The most dangerous decisions are those made with the heart when they should have been made with the mind. In the courts of Italy, I watched how the most effective rulers maintained perfect temperature control of their emotions. They could be warm when warmth served a purpose, cold when coldness was required. Those who could not master this art became slaves to their feelings and inevitably lost their power. Here's what most people don't understand. Being cold isn't about being cruel. It's about being clear. It's not about lacking feeling. It's about controlling it. The ability to set aside emotion when necessary is not a defect of character. It's a requirement of power. Consider these levels of emotional mastery: surface control, basic emotional regulation, immediate reaction, management, simple impulse control, primary response guidance, strategic temperature, calculated emotional display, purposeful feeling management, tactical empathy deployment, strategic sentiment control, perfect calibration, absolute emotional mastery, complete temperature control, perfect timing of cold and warm, total feeling manipulation. But let me ask you this. Why do so many fail at emotional mastery? They confuse feeling good with doing good. They mistake emotional satisfaction for strategic success. They choose the comfort of reaction over the power of response. The principle is fundamental. Power requires perfect temperature control. Know when to be warm, when to be cold, and most importantly, when to be neither. The ability to operate without emotional interference is not heartlessness, it's effectiveness. Master these elements of emotional control. Recognition. Identify emotional triggers. Spot reaction patterns. Recognize feeling traps. Detect manipulation. Attempts, regulation, control, immediate responses, manage emotional states, direct feeling flow, guide reaction paths, deployment, use emotion strategically, apply feeling tactically, display sentiment purposefully, employ empathy selectively. Remember this. Truth from the courts. The most dangerous opponent isn't the most aggressive one. It's the one who can turn their emotions on and off like a switch. They can be warm enough to attract and cold enough to strike. Your power multiplies through emotional mastery because you decide when to feel. You control how to react. You choose when to care. You determine when to respond. You select when to engage. You dictate when to withdraw. You command when to strike. The practical application requires systematic development. Emotional audit: map your trigger points, chart your reaction patterns, document your feeling traps, analyze your emotional weaknesses. Control development: build response delays, create feeling filters, establish reaction protocols, design emotional circuits. Strategic application: deploy warmth, purposefully apply coldness, strategically use feeling tactically, employ emotion effectively. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. The most powerful person in any room is the one who can feel deeply when appropriate and not feel at all when necessary. Emotional mastery isn't about being cold, it's about having perfect temperature control. Your task now is to develop emotional mastery. Identify your emotional patterns, recognize your feeling triggers, map your reaction tendencies, build your control mechanisms, develop your strategic responses, perfect your timing switches, master your temperature control. Remember, in the game of power, emotions are tools, not masters. They should be deployed strategically, not experienced accidentally. The masses are ruled by their feelings. The powerful rule their feelings. Consider these essential questions. When do emotions serve you? When do they hinder you? Where do you need more warmth? Where do you need more cold? How can you better control your temperature? When should you feel nothing at all? How can you master perfect timing? The question isn't whether to feel or not to feel. It's whether you control your emotions or they control you. Will you let your feelings dictate your actions, or will you master the art of emotional strategy? Listen carefully to this fundamental truth of power. Every battle is won or lost in the mind before it is won or lost in the world. The greatest victories are achieved not through superior strength, but through superior mental preparation. The most decisive battles are fought in the theater of thought. In Florence, I observed how the truly powerful understood something that others missed entirely. Physical conflict is merely the visible manifestation of mental warfare. Those who master the art of mental dominance rarely need to engage in actual combat. They win before the battle begins. Here's what most people don't understand. The mind is not just another battlefield, it is the primary battlefield. Everything else, resources, tactics, timing, these are all secondary to the mental game. When you control the mind, you control everything that follows. Consider these levels of mental warfare: personal mental mastery, internal dialogue control, belief system, management, confidence, cultivation, fear, regulation, tactical mental warfare, opponent psychology understanding, strategic uncertainty creation, confidence manipulation, doubt introduction, strategic mental dominance, reality frame control, perception management, narrative dominance, complete psychological advantage. But let me ask you this: why do so many fail at mental warfare? They focus on external battles while losing internal ones. They prepare their resources but neglect their minds. They train their bodies but leave their thoughts undisciplined. The principle is absolute. Victory must be achieved in the mind before it can be achieved in reality. The battle is won or lost in the space between your ears before it is won or lost in the space between you and your opponent. Master these elements of mental warfare: self-mastery. Control your internal dialogue, manage your belief systems, direct your mental energy, command your emotional state, master your thought patterns, guide your strategic thinking, dominate your fears. Opponent analysis: understand their psychology, map their mental weaknesses, identify their thought patterns, recognize their fear points, chart their confidence sources, track their belief systems, monitor their mental state. Strategic implementation: plant seeds of doubt, create psychological pressure, establish mental dominance, control the narrative frame, direct the psychological flow, manage the emotional climate, command the mental battlefield. Remember this truth from history: the greatest strategists won their most significant victories without ever engaging in physical battle. They understood that the mind conquered before the body moved. Your power multiplies through mental warfare because you win before engaging. You dominate without fighting. You control without forcing. You lead without pushing. You achieve without struggling. You succeed without battling. You triumph without conflicting. The practical application requires systematic development, mental preparation, build unshakable confidence, develop strategic thinking, create mental resilience, establish psychological strength, foster tactical awareness, cultivate strategic patience, master emotional control, opponent engagement project, psychological strength, create mental pressure, establish dominance frames, control, interaction, dynamics, direct engagement energy, manage psychological space, command, attention flow, victory securing, consolidate mental advantages, reinforce psychological gains, cement strategic positions, establish lasting dominance, create permanent impact, build enduring influence, secure mental territory. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. The most powerful person in any confrontation is not the strongest or the most aggressive. It's the one who has already won in their mind. They don't hope to win, they know they've won. Your task now is to develop complete mental mastery. Train your mind daily, strengthen your mental resolve, practice psychological warfare, perfect your mental game, master strategic thinking, develop tactical awareness, command your mental state. Remember, in the game of power, the mind is both the weapon and the battlefield. The masses focus on physical preparation. The powerful understand that mental preparation determines everything else. The question isn't whether you will engage in mental warfare, you already are. The question is whether you will be a master of it or a victim of it. Will you let others control the mental battlefield, or will you command it? Listen carefully to this essential truth of power. Your energy is sacred. Not every challenge requires your response. Not every battle deserves your participation. Not every fight is worth your time. The truly powerful understand that victory often lies not in what you choose to do, but in what you choose to ignore. In the courts of Florence, I observed how the most effective rulers mastered the art of selective engagement, while others exhausted themselves fighting every battle that presented itself. The wise chose only those conflicts that served their greater purpose. They understood that energy spent on insignificant victories is energy stolen from crucial ones. Here's what most people don't understand. The ability to ignore provocations is not weakness, it's power. The capacity to let certain battles pass is not cowardice, it's strategy. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Consider these levels of strategic selection: immediate discernment, threat level assessment, resource requirement, evaluation, potential benefit analysis, immediate cost calculation, strategic evaluation, long-term impact assessment, position, advancement, potential power, dynamic implications, alliance effect consideration, master selection, perfect battle choice, optimal engagement timing, maximum leverage, identification, ultimate outcome focus. But let me ask you this: why do so many waste their power on meaningless conflicts? They confuse activity with achievement. They mistake reaction for strategy. They allow others to dictate their battles rather than choosing their own. The principle is fundamental. Your power grows not through the battles you fight, but through the battles you choose. Every conflict you engage in should serve your greater purpose. Every battle you fight should advance your position. Master these elements of selective engagement. Battle assessment. Evaluate true significance, calculate real costs, measure actual benefits, assess genuine necessity, consider alternative paths, analyze hidden implications, gauge strategic value, engagement decision, choose optimal timing, select perfect positioning, determine best approach, plan resource allocation, consider withdrawal options, prepare contingencies, maintain strategic flexibility, energy, preservation, conserve crucial resources, maintain strategic reserves, protect core capabilities, guard essential strength, preserve vital energy, retain key advantages, save decisive power. Remember this truth from history. The greatest strategists weren't those who won the most battles. They were those who won the right battles. They understood that strategic ignorance is often more powerful than tactical engagement. Your power multiplies through selective engagement because you conserve energy for what matters. You focus resources on key battles. You maintain strategic clarity. You preserve tactical advantage. You retain operational freedom. You control the engagement tempo. You dictate the battlefield choice. The practical application requires systematic evaluation. Situation. Analysis. Identify true stakes. Assess real significance. Evaluate actual impact. Calculate genuine cost. Measure potential benefit. Consider strategic value. Determine necessity-level resource consideration. Evaluate energy requirements. Assess time investment. Calculate material costs. Consider opportunity costs. Measure relationship impact. Gauge reputation effect. Analyze position influence. Strategic decision. Choose engagement level. Select response type. Determine timing. Plan approach. Prepare resources. Consider alternatives. Maintain flexibility. Here's a truth the weak never grasp. The most powerful person in any situation is often the one who chooses not to engage. They understand that power lies not in fighting every battle, but in fighting only the battles that truly matter. Your task now is to master selective engagement. Evaluate every challenge carefully. Choose your battles strategically. Ignore provocations. Purposefully, preserve your energy consciously. Select your fights deliberately. Maintain your focus religiously. Guard your power zealously. Remember, in the game of power, not every battle deserves your attention. The masses fight whatever battle presents itself. The powerful fight only the battles that advance their purpose. Consider these essential questions. Does this battle serve your purpose? Will this engagement advance your position? Is this fight worth your energy? Could your resources be better used elsewhere? Does this conflict deserve your attention? Will this victory matter tomorrow? Is this truly your battle to fight? The question isn't whether you can win, it's whether you should fight at all. Will you let others choose your battles, or will you master the art of selective engagement? Listen carefully to this final and most crucial truth of power. You don't need a crown to rule. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need permission to govern. Power begins with the mastery of your own domain, your mind, your actions, your life. Throughout my years advising princes and rulers, I discovered something profound. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about achieving absolute sovereignty over yourself. The greatest empire you can rule is the empire of your own existence. The most important throne to claim is the throne of your own destiny. Here's what most people don't understand. Every person is already a prince of their own realm, but most live as subjects in their own kingdom. They follow others' rules in their own domain. They serve others' interests in their own territory. They live as servants in their own castle. Consider these levels of personal sovereignty: basic independence, self-directed thinking, autonomous; decision-making, personal boundary setting; individual choice assertion, strategic self-rule; destiny design control; life trajectory command; resource allocation mastery; personal empire building; absolute sovereignty; complete self-governance; total; life authorship, perfect direction control; ultimate outcome ownership. But let me ask you this. Why do so many fail to rule their own lives? They wait for permission to lead. They seek approval to decide. They look for validation to act. They surrender their crown to others' opinions. The principle is absolute. You are the prince of your own life. No one else can claim your throne. No one else can wear your crown. No one else can rule your kingdom, but you must choose to take power. It will never be given. Master these elements of personal sovereignty. Self-recognition. Acknowledge your authority. Accept your power. Embrace your responsibility. Own your decisions. Command your destiny. Direct your path. Author your story. Kingdom management. Control your environment. Manage your resources. Direct your energy. Guard your borders, expand your influence, build your legacy, strengthen your position. Strategic. Rule, make sovereign decisions, execute decisive actions, implement strategic plans, create lasting impact, build enduring systems, establish firm principles, leave powerful legacy. Remember this truth from history. The most powerful rulers weren't those who controlled the most territory. They were those who mastered themselves first. They understood that personal sovereignty precedes all other forms of power. Your power multiplies through self-rule because you stop seeking external permission. You cease requiring others' approval. You eliminate dependency on validation. You remove limiting beliefs. You destroy artificial boundaries. You break imposed limitations. You transcend external controls. The practical application requires systematic development, sovereignty declaration. Claim your authority. Assert your independence. Establish your principles. Define your territory. Set your boundaries. Declare your rules. State your intentions. Kingdom development. Build your resources. Strengthen your position. Expand your influence. Develop your capabilities. Enhance your power. Grow your impact. Increase your reach. Legacy creation. Establish your systems. Create your structures. Build your monuments. Leave your mark. Shape your world. Impact your sphere. Transform your domain. Here's a truth. The weak never grasp the most powerful. Person in any room is the one who has achieved complete sovereignty over themselves. They don't need external validation because they've already crowned themselves. Your task now is to claim your throne. Take command of your decisions. Assert control of your direction. Claim ownership of your choices. Accept responsibility for your outcomes. Embrace authority over your life. Exercise power in your domain. Rule your personal empire. Remember, in the game of power, the most important kingdom is your own life. The masses wait for others to crown them. The powerful crown themselves. The question isn't whether you have power. You do. The question is whether you will claim it, use it, and rule with it. Will you continue to live as a subject in your own kingdom, or will you finally take your rightful place on your throne? Your life is your empire. Your mind is your palace. Your choices are your crown. The time has come to rule.